This podcast was produced by OAR FM Dunedin with support from New Zealand On Air.
Welcome to the Local Election 2025, the OI podcast mini-series, brought to you by the Otago Institute for Arts and Sciences, the Otago branch of the Royal Society NZ Te Aotearoa. Our aim is to demystify the voting process, encourage participation in local democracy, and we present an apolitical political show providing information, context and background on a range of issues. Brought to you by experts on local politics, experts on the issues relevant to you, the voting public of Dunedin and wider Otago. And we also hope to have the voices of the candidates themselves. Today, we have Deputy CEO Amanda Vercoe. Now, you are also the General Manager Strategy and Customers. Amanda, welcome to the show.
Thank you so much.
And you have brought along with you Lisa Scott. So you are in charge of communication, Lisa, is that right?
Kia ora, yes. Thanks for having me. Yes, we've been working on our elections campaign right back since we started back on January the 6th this year.
Wow. And when you say your elections campaign, you are talking about getting people to vote, not campaigning yourselves.
Well, it's actually a lot of information, encouraging people to think about standing or nominating someone who might be a marvellous councillor and then checking you're enrolled to vote. Also, we're going to talk about this later, we've had a representation review. So the numbers of councillors in parts of our district have changed.
Right.
So we need to let people know that. And then all of the run-up towards election day, reminding people to get out there and vote. And, local government elections don't get as much attention as government elections with a big G, but they're just as important.
They are just. And some would say even more important because they're really what affects your local environment. Yeah. And this show is all about the ORC. It's all about the Otago Regional Council, what they do, how to vote, what everything means. And that's why we've got you two amazing folk along today to have that discussion. And right at the top of the show, what I would like to get out there is, and I'm going to throw this to you first, Amanda, what is the ORC? What's its job? What do you do? Why is it important?
Yeah, so thanks so much, Barbara. So, the Otago Regional Council, who are we? What do we do? We are a regional council under the local government legislation. And I like to think of our issues as being some of the ones that are really cross-boundary. So things like water quality, water quantity, air, biosecurity, biodiversity, which might be words that don't mean a lot, but those broader environmental issues that don't sort of stick nicely to boundaries.
And when you say cross-boundary, you mean within the Otago Regional Council or between different regions? Because, of course, the Otago Regional Council has boundaries with Southland, with the West Coast, with Canterbury, but also there's lots of different city councils. The DCC is just one of those councils within the Otago region. So you've also got...
Yes, that's correct. We've got Queenstown Lakes District Council, we've got the Central Otago District Council, we've got the Waitaki District Council, the Dunedin City Council and the Clutha District Council. So we cover a broad, I think we're the third largest geographic regional council in New Zealand. And yes, we border Environment Canterbury and Environment Southland, which are the equivalent organisations to us. So when I talk about cross-boundary, we manage the Otago region, but a lot of these issues are region-wide, and so we work closely with Environment Canterbury and Environment Southland as well. Because I guess some of the other things we tackle are things like flood protection and flood monitoring, civil defence and emergency. So when we have those big rainfalls, we work closely around the civil defence response. Natural hazards mapping is a big one, and we've just had a big release this week of a natural...
So that's earthquakes, landslides,
flooding,
tsunami. Tsunami
Yes.
must be a big one here in the Otago Harbour.
Yeah, and the interconnections between them as well, because obviously if we understand the hazards, then planning for the management of them can get better and keep people safer and communities safer. So there's a real close link there. The most tangible thing we do, though, and I think that people probably associate with us, is we also run the buses. So the Dunedin Public Transport Network.
Public transport. It's a big one.
It's a
big
Public
one.
Transport Network. Two big public transport networks, and increasingly looking at some of those regional connections. And through our some of our planning processes in the last wee while, we have got some interregional studies coming up in the next couple of years.
Because it is interesting. So you're running, you are the Otago Otago Regional Council. So you're looking to run, the Regional Council, not you personally.
Correct.
So you're charged. You're with organising and running and making sure everything works well for public transport across that entire region. But of course, there's actually only public transport buses in Queenstown and Dunedin, and so there is a bit of a gap there because there's a whole lot of other councils that you read off right at the top there. So are there plans for that? Is that something that the councillors have some say on, or is that or influence in?
Yes, look, and absolutely, it's a really live conversation around our council table and within communities. And so, for example, in the annual plan, because local government works in annual plan cycles. So in our yearly plan, councillors have just recommended to council the inclusion of an Upper Clutha business case for public transport. So that had been taken out of the plan. It's now been put back in the plan. There's a lot of complexity though around the other big funder, which is New Zealand Transport Authority, Waka Kotahi.
And of course that's centrally governed. So that depends on who's in government. And that's that really weird interplay between the different levels of government. So that's where you're voting, you have to vote in all the elections. You have to vote in the central election, and then you have to vote in the local elections and make sure that you're voting both for your city council, which in our case is the Dunedin City Council, but of course if you're in Wanaka or Queenstown, that's the Queenstown Lakes Council or Alex or wherever.
Correct.
And then the ORC itself, which sits in the top there, because public transport is quite a big thing for the ORC, but also a lot for residents around here. But it is kind of tricky because it's, as you say, it depends on funding from the central government and mandates from the central government. The ORC runs the public transport, but the bus hub and the bus stops are run by the local city, and I assume that's the same in Queenstown as it is here.
Yes, that's correct. So look, it's a big complex web, but we all work together. And I think that's what we need to keep in mind, is that our communities don't really probably care who runs the bus stops and the buses and the various interactions. They just want the buses to come on time and be regular and be usable. And so we do a lot of planning work behind the scenes together. There's a lot of advisory groups, there's a lot of collaboration groups between ourselves, our local either DCC or QLDC, Waka Kotahi, to try and make sure that that is a good experience for those bus users.
I guess when it comes down to who is in charge of it and that difference of the different layers, it's tricky when people want to say, okay, I really value public transport, I want to vote for someone who really values that, and knowing at what level that really is effective.
Yeah, and look, I think we'll see that come through with some of the candidates that'll stand for Otago Regional Council this year. Public transport is a really big issue. Like I said earlier, I think it's probably the one thing that people are most familiar about with what Otago Regional Council does. Yeah. So I would envisage a number of our candidates standing because they want to make a difference in that area. And we have, from a governance perspective, we have a public and active transport committee, or we have had this trainium. So there's a lot of attention and a lot of planning and a lot of focus on public transport from ORC's perspective.
Yeah, and we have seen quite a lot of movement in that area over the last triennium, I think.
Oh, that's great.
Well, yeah, from my point of view, I don't know if that.
One thing too that occurs to me, which is always really important, is that there's a lot of space for public consultation. So,
that's true.
When it came to public transport, we just ran one, and we get a lot of responses. So that factors into councillor decision making as well. So
that's a way that you can sort of influence what the ORC are doing between elections, basically, because you're just giving feedback on individual specific things. Now, I'm going to throw this open. Whether I don't know if this is you, Lisa, or Amanda. If people want to see what you're consulting on, how do they do that?
We run across all of the media that we use. So, if it's a large formal consultation, you'll definitely know about it. It'll be on our website, on our Facebook pages. We'll run digital ads. We'll run ads in the paper because we know a lot of people just use print media to get their info. Yeah, it's we have Te Matapuna, which is a print newsletter. It goes out about 4 times a year to hopefully a lot of people's letterboxes, and it's also in stores. but then you can subscribe to OnStream, which goes out to a
What's
set list.
OnStream?
It's our email newsletter.
Right.
That's a good way to get your info straight to your inbox if you don't have it. Pop onto our website, subscribe, and you'll get a fresh copy. I'm just about to finish writing the next one.
Right, excellent.
And I was just going to add, so for the consultation around transport that Lisa referred to was our 3-yearly regional public transport plan, and we had over 400 people submit on that plan.
And of course, when you say 400 people, it might be people submitting on behalf of a group.
Yes.
Because I know, for instance, the West Harbour Community Board submitted
Correct.
as a board on behalf of the community. So when there's 400 submissions, that's actually representing a lot bigger number of the residents of Otago.
And I think it's really powerful too. People, you hear people say, "Oh, my vote won't do anything, or my voice can't," but yes, it can. I mean, and it's actually a really powerful feeling to be a part of democracy, to have your voice being a part of a conversation in your local area. I think it's brilliant.
Yeah, so I would just add, I agree totally. Like, democracy is made by the people, and it's made by people putting their voice forward, informing themselves of what the issues are, what matters to them, what they value, and then translating that into feedback, consultation. And we are really lucky to have a system and a government
100%.
that allows us to give feedback to them and say we do or we don't like this, and to directly elect our representatives to...
Yeah, sorry, I didn't mean to interrupt you just then, but if I could even take a step back, I think the foundation of, is people standing. So as all those, the people standing, so you've then got people to vote in, and the media, and what you're doing today plays a really important role as well, of that raising awareness and that putting a spotlight and taking the time to really focus on it and help people learn about it.
Thank you. Yeah, no, it's.
So
I think it is really great when we're sort of in that local elections frame of mind now. So I think if everybody just I feel it's a little bit like first aid courses. Like, sometimes you think, oh gosh, I've got to go and renew my first aid course, right? And it's like everybody does it, and you sort of know what's happening, and you sort of know where you're going. And it can be like one of those, oh no, I've got to do that type events. And local elections can be a little bit like that. But what I think, and this is a little bit out there, is what you've got to do is just fully commit. So if you're doing a role acting thing at a first aid course, just fully commit. And then it's the funnest day out you've ever had, because they've got all the props there and you get a decent practice. And I think that, not with the props and the costumes and things with local elections, but I think it's the same thing. Fully commit, find out as much as you can about the people that are standing, or stand yourself. So we'll come back to nominations in a bit. But I was just going to add in there, the way that I keep track on what the ORC is consulting on, and this might seem really, really dull, but I just go to the ORC website, and there's like a little click link there that just says we're consulting on, and then it just lists the things.
Yeah,
that
the new
you're
website is
on.
brilliant.
And I find that really, you can just see what's there. Every time there's something that you're consulting on, there's a time that it's open, so you know when you started consulting, when the closing time is. There's usually a form there, and all the forms seem to have a big bit that you can just write whatever you like that's kind of relevant to the topic. But even the annual plan feedback and the 9-year, 10-year plans, they're really easy, because you can answer the questions and just stick to those specific questions that the council have asked for feedback on, because they're something that you've identified as a operating team that you need feedback from the public on. But you can also just comment on anything that's in the plan. And of course, you've just done that for this year, but next year there will be another annual plan. Yes,
that's correct. Local government has this wonderful annual planning cycle. So yes, we've just consulted on year 2, which is this coming fight, so 25, 26. And I think the other important thing is when you have submitted, you actually get the opportunity to then come along to the hearings and present against your submission. And I think that's really great opportunity for people to come and talk to councillors face to face, to share their experiences and influence that decision making. Deliberations or hearings and deliberations where councillors consider all of that feedback took place a couple of weeks ago, and council at the end of June will be making those final decisions. And then the ORC cycle is that we invoice our rates on I know no one likes to talk about rates, but we invoice rates on a yearly basis. So those rates will be invoiced in September.
Right.
But at the same time, we start sense checking planning for our year 3, which is 26-27.
Right.
Because that plan was set 2 years ago as part of our long-term plan.
Right.
And so we really need to come back and revisit it. And this year's a really good example. In our long-term plan, the rates this year were due to at a total level increase by 13.8%
Right.
to account for a whole lot of new work, the new environmental fund. But through the consultation process, through the hearings, through deliberations, through ongoing work by staff, we have now brought that rates increase is now going to be in total 5.7%. So
Wow, that's
a lot
quite
lower.
a big difference.
But that'll feel different. So for that 5.7 will be lower in some regions. For Dunedin, because of public transport, it'll actually be more around 9%. So we're always working on how we
Right, so
continue.
you're shifting some things so people who get more benefit from some of the things you do
Correct.
pay more in their rates for those things. So it's a bit of a user pay system.
Yes, well, transport certainly is. So Dunedin ratepayers pay for most of the Dunedin public transport network, the ORC proportion
Right,
of that.
yeah.
Obviously, a huge amount of it is funded by Waka Kotahi.
Yeah.
But we are really focused on,
And I think that's sorry, I'm just going to interrupt you. I think that's kind of fair, right? If I was a ratepayer or a resident of Alex, where there are no public buses, I would feel a little bit aggrieved at paying rates to fund the bus service in Dunedin and Queenstown. And I might be okay with paying a little bit to it, like a contribution, because I know people from other places come to Dunedin and that's their, or Queenstown.
And I think we all benefit. So I think the split is 90-10. So 90% of
there
the
is some
cost
just benefit to
is ratepayer,
society.
10% is general.
Yeah.
And exactly in lower congestion, because obviously the more people that catch the bus, the less cars on the road there are. Climate change, we all benefit
It's quite
from
a
that
balance
lowering in
there of
emissions.
different things that you're kind of looking at and trying to decide. And I just want to sorry, I interrupted you there.
No. That's the only thing I was going to add is just to, I think, really reassure listeners that councillors and councillors and staff are really focused on listening. We understand cost of living crisis. We understand that the cost of doing everything has gone up, and we are really focused on delivering value, on delivering efficiency, on being effective, on doing the best we can to enable ratepayers to benefit from those services that we provide.
I think another big thing in that is just making sure that the people paying the rates, the residents and the ratepayers, because of course even people who aren't paying rates directly, if you're renting or something, your landlord is paying your rates on your behalf. So you're still paying rates just as part of your rent, right? So just the residents but there's a strange thing there with ratepayers, of course, isn't there? Because some people can vote if they own land in Otago but don't actually live here. They can still vote. Is that true?
Yes. Mm-hmm. So you can check your eligibility. We'll share some links with you, Barbara, to put up against the link. But against
for the
podcast,
episode,
there are. You can double check that. But yes, if you are a ratepayer, so you own property and you pay rates, you will be eligible to vote. You can only vote once, though, for an election. So, for example, if I owned a house in Dunedin and a house in Wanaka, my understanding is I can only vote for ORC once.
Yes.
Yep.
But if you own a house in Wanaka and a house in the Coromandel, you can vote in both those regional councils. So you can only vote once in an election, and the ORC is an election.
Yes.
But of course you can vote in the ORC and the DCC elections, or wherever if you live in Dunedin. So we really, really encourage people to actually engage with the ORC as much as you do with the DCC, because I know in past years a lot of people have voted in the DCC for councillors and the mayor and maybe community boards if they're available in their area. But then they've sort of felt that they didn't have enough knowledge of the ORC or of the candidates that were standing for it to actually put a vote in there. Mm. So we're really encouraging people to just find out as much as they can about what the ORC does. And I think it's really if you step back, it's kind of simple, because it's basically anything to do with environment, air, water, land, and consents around environment things, as well as public transport, except for the stops. So it's only the things that are moving with the public transport, right? So that kind of makes sense. And air pollution And I think noise. Do you do noise as well? Or is that the DCC? That might be DCC.
Yes,
that's
DCC. Noise is DCC.
Yes. I like to think of it as like, quite like to do a lot of outdoor activities. So if I'm tramping or if I'm paddleboarding or if I'm somewhere in Otago and I'm thinking about Otago's unique biodiversity, I want it to keep it as it is because I enjoy it. And so,
and I think that's common for a lot of people in New Zealand and particularly in Otago, I think. Yeah.
So think about the things that you love and those wonderful places that you love to go on holidays and, special places to you. So think about the natural world there. We're charged with making sure that introduced pests, plant pests, animal pests don't ruin it for us.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And, of course, you have that amazing Eco Fund, which we are really, really excited that has maintained through all the budget cuts and everything. And it's one of the few places that communities can get a little bit of funding help to actually help the community itself to look after the biodiversity, to get rid of pests, to there's
native planting, community projects. The Eco Fund has really gone from strength to strength, and
28 projects got funded this year. That's a lot,
and usually oversubscribed from an application perspective. And the panel, who are councillors and a mana whenua rep, have always take great care to allocate that funding, but it's so important for that work to be going alongside, because Otago Regional Council can't do it all. And one of the things we've really been, our councillors have been really pushing us to, and we've been pivoting to, is that we need to work with the community and we need to partner with the community. We can't do it all.
Yeah.
Actually, a lot of the time the community know the land better than potentially we do, or they've got activities that have been underway for a long time. So it really works. We can work really well together. Like some of our engineering hazards work down south, I know they've really valued having inputs from the community of photos from
hazards work. What? Can you just elaborate on that?
Yeah, so engineering and hazards in the Lower Clutha I'm thinking of particularly, where they're looking at the interrelation of basically water and what water, the pathways water is taking through rivers, flood banks to stop communities being flooded when we get huge rainfalls. But a lot of that, there's a lot of historical information in those communities about the way the river's been, where the river's gone to, because rivers change. It's amazing over time. And I am no environmental scientist or natural hazards analyst, so I can't talk in much detail about it.
Yeah. But you do have a large science group within your team and the operations team. Yeah.
Honestly, you can't help but geek out a bit when you just you drill down into some of the natural hazard stuff, or our scientists who are looking at lizards and birds in Otago, and it's fascinating. I love it. Yeah.
So I guess that's one of the biggest things that our rates pay for is the people that are in the ORC and the people that are doing all this work. And I think a lot of people the only interaction that people sometimes get with things like big bodies like the ORC is your rates bill and election time and the councillors. But of course there's a big difference between that governance role, which is what the elections are all about, and the operations role of the people actually doing the work. So one big thing is what you guys do, and that's kind of all down to operations, because it's the operations team that does everything. That's right, isn't it?
Yeah, correct. But I guess the governance, the really critical role of governance is to set that strategic direction, set that policy direction, set the budgets, set the set up, make the decisions around which options we might go with. Also be the public proponents of some of the actions we take. Our councillors are out a lot. If we're consulting on things, they will always be at drop-in sessions, talking to people, bringing their perspectives back into the council chamber for when those decisions are made.
Because they represent their communities and spread throughout the region might care more about one thing than another. It might be more important to them. So, they step up and represent the things that their communities really care about.
Yeah. So I guess that's why, I don't guess it, I know it, that's why voting in the ORC part of the local elections is really important, because you need to be voting for candidates that you think represent your values and what you really care about the most.
Yeah, and the candidate could be you.
The candidate could be you, right? Okay, I can see that we're going to talk about nominations. So nominations, they're the same for as they are for the DCC and community boards. They open on the 4th of July and they close on the 1st of August.
Correct.
So you have basically that just slightly less than a month to decide if you would like to stand. It's fairly easy to actually do the nomination process. Would you like to talk us through that?
Yeah, sure. So you don't actually have to be resident in the region to put yourself forward, but you do need to be nominated by two local people.
Right.
So that's,
which is slightly odd.
But I guess if
you know,
in Tauranga last year, I understand the mayor, Mahi Drysdale, wasn't resident
right.
in Tauranga at the time.
But he was going to shift.
He was shifting, yep.
Yes.
Yeah.
So,
but, to overcome those sorts of scenarios,
so you need two nominators.
Two nominators.
And they just have to be resident in the area. Is there a time that they have to have been resident here, or just?
Oh, that's pushing my technical knowledge. Not as far as I'm aware of.
Yeah,
they have to be on the roll.
They just have to be on the roll as living here.
Yes.
And that's as easy as registering, right? So everybody needs to register. That's just going to put a plug in here for registering. And to register, you don't need to register for each of the different elections, right? If you're on the electoral roll, whether it's on the general roll or the Māori roll, then you are on the roll. That's it. And it's really easy to do. Just go to vote.nz and it takes like 5 minutes. Just go through. Now, being on the Māori roll or the general roll for the ORC elections, it makes no difference. Is that true?
Yes, correct.
Yeah. So you don't actually have to make that decision right now because it makes no difference for the DCC, community boards or the ORC. If you choose to be on one or the other, you can change up to 3 months before the next election. So they sort of close it off so that they can, I don't know why, but they do. So you can just decide I need to be on the roll now, and you have that option of changing from being on the Māori roll if you whakapapa Māori to being on the general roll or vice versa. And that you might want to change your mind or decide later on once you see who's standing in the general election. But in our region, some regions it matters, but in our region, in the ORC, the DCC, community boards, it does not matter which role you're on.
I think from a thinking about standpoint, it's too many stands, it's interesting that you don't need to have a certain set of life skills to put yourself forward as a candidate. I think when you say, Amanda, it comes down to how well you get on with people, what your skills are for, you're going to be your community representative. So you do have to have quite a gregarious personality. Ooh. I don't think you could be shy and retiring, really, to be
maybe. I mean, there is a difference. I think there's a different set of skills to being elected as there are to being a councillor. And I think that's unfortunate, but I can't see a way around that when we have a democratic election system, which, that's that famous quote, democracy's the worst system out there except for all the others. So we're going to stick with that at the moment. It is a great system. And as Lisa says, you don't need any special skills. Like, it's not like you have to have gone to university or you have to have been in business or anything. What we want is representation. Correct. And representation means if you represent a group of people who are similar to you, which we all do in one way or another because we live in an area, we're a certain age group, we've got certain life experience. And I think possibly life experience is the biggest skill that you can bring.
You do need to be able to collaborate. That's a key strength.
Yeah, I think collaboration. I think governance experience.
Can I just say here, I think that we're confusing being a good councillor with being a councillor because not all councillors historically, not talking specifically about anyone in the ORC or DCC, have been good collaborators.
I was going to say it's probably a little bit beyond our scope as staff to comment on councillor performance. We'll leave that to you.
We'll just leave that. We'll leave that to the side completely.
Yeah, I think governance experience is really helpful. The ability to, from an Otago Regional Council perspective, our reports and the decisions that you will be asked to make are often not as a councillor, not sort of short-term, easy decisions. Some of these are like really big, weighty decisions. They're also
and quite long-term ones.
Absolutely. Yeah. Some of them, obviously the central government reform means the Resource Management Act piece is landscape is shifting.
Yeah, but we're not sure where that's going to land.
Some of the decisions we make, when you're making a decision around a plan under the Resource Management Act, some of that stuff's quite complex. And our staff's role is to try and translate that, and because the community needs to understand it too, but the ability to digest large amounts of information, think about those future some of the benefits might be 20, 30 years out, but the hard stuff comes now. So these are all tensions that you're having to navigate. So the ability to work
and
through
especially
that.
when you're dealing with things that the ORC are dealing with, those big environmental, big infrastructure type questions, big environmental questions, climate change, water regimes, all of those big things. That is really a big job.
Yeah, and I think our councillors, when they get elected and in that inaugural council meeting, they sign an oath to represent all of Otago. So also that ability to understand, you might be an urban, elected in an urban constituency, but actually a lot of our issues are rural. So, the willingness to put on a pair of gumboots and go out and understand the community really values not just not just councillors who are rural councillors getting out there, but actually our urban councillors being out there as well and understanding. So they've got trust and confidence that decisions around the table are well informed. So I think that willingness to learn new things, to make decisions on issues outside of your experience is really important as well. And we cover, like I say, a huge geographic area. We have council meetings in the region. So while our primary council chamber is in Dunedin, we try and go to each of the different constituencies at least once a year. And then we do site visits after those council meetings to try and meet with community groups, to meet with locals, so that our councillors from different parts of the region are building that whole of Otago perspective when they're back making decisions.
Wow. It does sound like quite a big everything.
I think you've got to be all in, really.
I think so.
I mean, it's not the easiest job in the world by any means, but you're across some really fascinating stuff in a 3-year term. And we have put some info on the website for people who are thinking about it, about how much councillors get paid.
I was just going to ask.
Time responsibilities.
I was just going to ask exactly those things. Like,
it's quite fascinating.
I mean, it is a full-time job, right?
Definitely.
So, yes, yeah. Although it's the pay possibly doesn't necessarily, depending on what am I trying to say? I think one of the challenges of local politics and encouraging candidates to get involved is if you're currently employed in a full-time job, how you accommodate being a councillor in a full-time job.
Right, because not everyone can just step out of their current job. If you're running a business, it's difficult to just step out of that. And of course, you've got no job security because every 3 years there's another election, which is great for democracy because it means, councillors are one of those few groups of employed people that they get a performance review really harshly every 3 years.
Every 3 years, yes. And I think from a regional council perspective, unlike our city council's colleagues, our councillors come. So currently we've got one of our councillors is based in Queenstown, a couple in Alexandra and Cromwell, one based in West Otago, one based in Oamaru. So we can't have short regular meetings face-to-face because that would be too much travel time. So what we do is meet every we're on a sort of a 6-weekly cycle of we do 2 days at a time for meetings where we push all the meetings together. So it's a really full-on 2 days, but it means that the travel people only have to travel that once a month.
Right, so you're having no half days, essentially. You're just putting it into a big block.
We try not to. And of course we've got Zoom and the ability to attend meetings remotely for people that can't get to the meetings. So we're flexible like that. Yeah, but I guess some people want to be face-to-face when they're making these big decisions.
There is really no kind of substitute for actually being in the same room. And you also, we were talking before about being able to work collaboratively together. And of course, in order to do that, you need to be a group that, you know each other a little bit and you're able to see people who may have different ideas and they may be,
you can find common ground.
But you can find common ground and you can see them, as a human being, as a person who has, some reason for standing, which hopefully is because they want to serve the community and the region and they've got passion about that. And you might disagree on certain ideas, but you still value that person as a person. And I think that's much easier to do if you've had at least some face-to-face meetings. And then once you've got that sort of working rapport. But it is a very interesting thing that you bring up about the ORC because it's that spatial thing. It covers such a big area.
It just is a bit harder to get everyone together. And we certainly have, some of our councillors have asked us to think about how we could make it more accessible. And so I know some city councils or some other councils, do evening meetings and that sort of thing. We haven't quite been able to find an easily workable solution, but it's something we'll continue to look at because obviously we want people to be interested. We want people to put their hands up to stand. We want people to care. about the work we do.
Yeah. And of course, running evening meetings has an impact on other people, whether they can or can't do it, because, people have
Families,
other obligations in the evening.
And also for community participation, it's, we have public forums at the start of all of our meetings, when we have hearings and things. So I don't think there's any perfect answer apart from so councillor pay is set by the Remuneration Authority, and so it's an independent authority.
So that's a really good point, is that councillors do not set their pay. They have absolutely nothing to do with it, neither at the ORC nor at the DCC, nor community boards for that matter.
I guess there's a slight nuance there. So the Remuneration Authority gives Otago Regional Council a pool of money.
Right.
And then actually councillors do determine how that pool is split up. So
they could give it all to one person.
No. There's a base minimum required amount to go to every councillor.
Right.
And then what councillors do, so what our council in their structure around how they were going to make their decisions and have their committees, they have 2 co-chairs for every committee, and so they actually apportioned the rest of it evenly because everyone had additional responsibilities. But in some other councils, you might just have...
That's interesting. That's a very fair sort of a way, isn't
you
it?
might just have chairs of committees and they might get paid more than ordinary committee members, or however. There's lots and lots of different ways to work it. So that's one of the decisions they have to make, usually in the first 2 or 3 months of being part of a new council.
Right. And does the chair get paid more?
Yes, so that's another good question. From a regional council perspective, it's another reason why we're a little bit different in that we don't have elections for the chair.
Right, so there's no mayor voted for the regional council. Because that would be very confusing, wouldn't it?
But interestingly, what drives increases in participation in voting is usually a really interesting mayoralty race. Whereas when you have potentially an incumbent who is highly likely to get re-elected, the data shows a loose correlation with less, with less turnout.
So maybe if the ORC did have an elected chair,
I don't know. I ponder these things sometimes as a democracy elections geek. But anyway, we don't have that under the legislation.
Is it possible to change that? No, it's part of the legislation.
So it's part of the legislation. What our councillors do is on the inaugural meeting, they sign their oaths of oaths to being a councillor, and then they have to elect a chair. And it's actually, I feel like it's quite a tough thing to ask a brand new council to do, to elect a chair in their first meeting, but that is what the legislation requires, so that's what they do. The chair does get paid more. The chair gets paid $158,000.
Right.
So that is seen as a full-time job.
Right.
Yes.
I mean, and I think
and
it
is
very
remunerated
much is.
accordingly. Yeah. And so that's set by the Remuneration Authority. All the other councillors, the other 11, are apportioned out of that overall remuneration pool. So for this triennium, that has meant the deputy chair has received $88,000, and our councillors have received approximately $67,000. Yeah.
Right. Yeah. And I guess that's kind of similar to the DCC, but I do not have those numbers with me.
No, I don't have those numbers with me either. Sorry,
I don't have those. The numbers that I have are, I have the size of the ORC. It is 31,251 kilometres square. At the June 2023 census, it was 240,900 residents, which is 4.8% of the New Zealand total population was inside. That's quite a chunk. And that was a 7% increase in the population from 2018. So just between 2018 and 2023, that's a big increase, 7%.
Well, it's actually a great segue into one of the changes
representation review
that we've got this year, which is every 6 years we have to do what's called a representation review, where we look at the data, population data primarily, and we determine whether the current makeup of our council in terms of elected representatives is the right representation figure, essentially. So,
because that's so I'm just going to interrupt there and say it's a really big difference between the ORC elections and the DCC elections, because in the DCC you're voting for 14 councillors and everyone can rank all of the councillors, whereas the ORC, you have wards or constituencies,
correct,
which we used to have in the DCC but we no longer have. So you have these constituencies.
Yes.
So we had a different number to what we have now.
Well, that's correct. And so that population growth you spoke of earlier, what we found when we looked at the data and when councillors looked at the data is that was primarily reflected in growth in population in Queenstown, Wanaka, and that Central Lakes, Upper Lakes area.
Right.
And so what our council worked through was a long process of looking at communities of interest, which are things like how communities operate together, representation, fairness of representation, and how does the community have access to elected members, and where our council landed and what's subsequently been through a sort of essentially a hearings process with the local government commission.
That all went out to review as well.
It did.
I know that everyone was able to
Correct,
have
we
their
did.
say on that in one of our amazing consultation type events that you guys run.
Yeah, we actually did quite a bit. We did early engagement just to sort of get a sense of how people were feeling, and then we did formal consultation. But what happened there is we have ended up retaining 12 councillors overall, but the Dunedin constituency, which is essentially Central Otago and Queenstown Lakes and Wanaka area, has gone from 3 councillors to 4.
Right.
So
So
they
that's
will have
Alex, Cromwell, all around Wanaka,
Queenstown,
Queenstown, Hawea, all those little places in there.
Correct.
Which is where it's growing.
Yes, that is where it's
according
growing.
to the data.
They will be electing 4 Otago Regional Council councillors, and Dunedin, when we looked at the Dunedin data, hadn't grown significantly, and within the population data guidelines that are provided, it still worked to be represented by 5 elected members in Dunedin.
Right.
So that is how we've retained the 12 overall.
Right.
So Dunedin will be electing 5 councillors, down from 6.
Oh.
And Upper Lakes, Dunedin constituency will be electing 4 councillors instead of 3.
Yeah. And of course, Molyneux, which is Balclutha and
Correct.
Clydeville and around there, stay with the 2 councillors that they've always had. And Moraki stays with the 1 councillor that they've all had.
That's correct. And Molyneux also includes Mosgiel. It was one of the issues that
yes, that's true.
our council looked at as part of that review, was whether Mosgiel was better aligned with Dunedin. But in the end, through ORC functions in terms of flood banks and drainage and some of those rural issues, there was still quite a lot of alignment with
So it's really talking about,
Molyneux.
it's really looking at what the ORC does and that role as environment, and then how that kind of interacts with where the people are. You were talking about this edge bit here, and I found this really interesting because it's quite a tricky thing, this changing all the populations around, and there's kind of, it's not exactly the same, but you try and balance it within sort of a 5% margin of error.
10%. So we had a plus or minus 10% rule. So that meant that the number of the total population, the constituency population divided by the number of councillors had to be plus or minus 10% of the total number of population divided by the number of councillors.
Right.
So it's a plus or minus 10% ratio, which sounds really complicated.
There's always some maths in there somewhere.
Lisa will be rolling her eyes at my lack of plain English.
But the interesting thing is that it's good to know that somebody is taking care of that. So to the best of our collective ability, the number of people who are responsible for voting for one representative on the council is the same regardless of which ward or constituency you're in. And you set the wards, constituencies, the boundaries of those as best you can along the lines of the things that the ORC is charged with dealing with, which is largely environment, also civil defence, all of those big hazards, and air pollution, and of course the public transport.
Yeah.
And there's obviously a little bit of spatial in there because there's always that idea that it's good to be able to contact your person, your councillor.
Yeah.
And look, I think one of the tensions for us working through that process, and for regional councils possibly more so than urban councils, is that a lot of our rural areas aren't hugely populated, but it's so important that they are represented. So we did struggle a little bit with making sure that those rural areas had adequate representation when you're using a population model.
Yeah.
But I think we got there in the end, and I think
Right.
our councillors made some good decisions.
It's exciting, isn't it? Change is always a little bit exciting. A little bit scary, but a little bit exciting. It's always exciting.
Yes. And I think just linking on from that, in terms of talking about change, the other change that we've already talked about, that move to STV, I think for Dunedin STV, our Dunedin voters, STV will be really familiar because the Dunedin City Council uses STV. For the rest of Otago, because I think your podcast's Otago-wide, isn't it?
Yeah, it's out there. It's
Yes.
on everything. It's
So I
on
think-
Spotify, it's on Google, it's on YouTube, it's on everything, Apple Podcasts,
So
anywhere.
great.
And you can also just download it from the OAR.org
whatever it is, NZ website, the Otago Radio Access. Otago Access Radio. Oh my goodness. Taking over the world.
Perfect, which is a great opportunity for me to also emphasise to our the listeners outside of Dunedin, from Clutha District or Waitaki or Queenstown Lakes or Central Otago District Council, that move to STV will be quite different because those other councils use first past the post.
Right.
So they will be ticking. But for ORC, it needs to be numbering. So we've got a whole lot of education material that Lisa was talking about. That we've got a flyer that will be going out with the voting papers, and we're going to be putting a whole lot of information up on our website. So we really want to help people understand STV, help people understand how to use it, so that we don't get ineligible votes, because unfortunately if you tick for ORC this election, it won't be counted.
Right. And I can help clear that up in just a nutshell, because I have just done the interview with Janine Hayward, Prof, who just knows everything there is to know about STV. It's really a simple process. I think a lot of people get apprehensive about STV because they think, it's really complicated, I don't know what. It is not. It is really simple. It's as simple as ranking who you rate. If you rate someone, if you think they're great, if you think they represent your values, rank them. And that's as simple as it is. Start at 1 and go down. So your most preferred person, the person that you rate the most, give them a 1 and then keep going. Numbers. As long as you can count numbers, don't miss out any numbers. You can't miss out numbers.
Don't do a smiley face.
Don't do a smiley face. Don't put ticks or other marks on it. But when you're doing STV, it's as simple as counting.
And you don't have to rank them all.
You don't have. You can stop at any point.
If there is a flavour that you do not prefer, do not rank it.
Yes, it's as simple as that. It's as simple as if you rate them, rank them. If you can pick ice cream, a tub of ice cream with a group of friends, then you can do STV. It's really simple. 5-year-olds can do it.
Well, and actually one of the STV videos that the team have put together uses ice cream flavours as an example. So it's a really good example.
It's a really good example. And I just find that everybody has been in that situation where they've gone to the supermarket or they've been sent on a supermarket run to get a tub of ice cream for their family, and they've got all sorts of people, but you agree on what everybody kind of prefers.
I think one of the great things about STV too, though, is that your vote isn't wasted. So your second or third choice could well get in and be elected. So I think that for me that's much fairer because you're not just getting one.
Oh, it's absolutely much fairer. It's not just for you. It's objectively more fairer. And more fairer. Oh my goodness, it's like I've forgotten how to speak English. But so the difference between first past the post is easier to count and to work out all that back stuff of who has won, who's got through. Whereas STV, because you're not wasting those votes, then it's a little bit more complicated in the background. But we don't need to worry about that as voters because that's all taken care of by people who have no vested interest in anything. They're objective people. And usually they're not even from the same electorate. Obviously, that's not the case with the general elections. But anyway, for STV, it's really simple to actually vote, and it's much preferable to have a system where it's really easy to vote and get your preference elected so your vote is doing what you think it's doing.
Yeah. But if you do need a refresher, we have some really simple stuff that will be going up on the website in the next couple of days.
And we will put a link to that in our episode description. So that's fabulous. Thank you for doing all that. Yeah, it's a big change, but I think it's a change for the better. I think it's great.
That's great feedback. I guess as staff, either option delivers outcomes, and but this was the decision that our council made to move to STV. So
it's fantastic. I think
we're lucky to have options,
and I think it's great for the DCC Dunedin public because they've just got one system. Because it's really confusing if you've got a bunch of different elections on the same ballot papers and you've got different voting systems at the same time. And first past the post, it has that really weird thing where people feel like they have to do tactical voting because they're afraid that it's going to split the vote. Right. And that's really something that STV doesn't allow.
So no need for any of that kind of machination.
There's no need for you to overthink it.
But you do need to find us in the booklet. Are we still at the back?
Normally,
probably,
yes, correct.
So be patient, keep reading.
Yep.
Yeah, and just vote for all. And, the booklet has 120 words and a picture of the person. But what I would say is 120 words is not a lot to make your judgment on. go searching for more information about the candidates. And really, if you don't know anything about the candidates aside from their name, don't rank them. Find out more about them.
I was thinking about what you were saying earlier about, essentially, we're in a room with 3 complete elections junkies here. But once you dip your toe into it, it's very easy to get very addicted.
Because it's exciting.
Fascinating.
Because it is fascinating.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. And I think there'll be lots of other ways to find out information about candidates. In the lead up to elections, a lot of community groups do host the candidate evenings.
Yes.
The ODT normally run, or community newspapers normally run series with candidates that want to be interviewed. There's a lot of candidates actually are happy to be contacted themselves and have a chat.
We ran last local elections, we ran the ORC candidate spotlight, which of course was just for the Dunedin ward. So we just wrote to all the candidates and said, come in, we'll do an interview. We gave them all the same questions. We gave them all the same amount of time to answer the questions. We didn't tell anyone the questions beforehand, and then we put them all up on the internet. And that was fabulous because we had just a really objective kind of 10 minutes with each of the candidates, and we are going to do that this year, but I think we're going to just do it with the DCC candidates because there's so many of them. It's a bit crazy.
Yeah, there is.
But I think it's a really good shout out to any groups out there, even if it's just a garden club, or just a garden club. If it's a garden club, get together with a few garden clubs around and organise a Meet the Candidates evening. There's lots of community groups out there, and you can just do that. All their contact details are all listed on the website there, and you can, because you have to, and you can really, as a group, organise that, Meet the Candidates.
Yeah, absolutely. And candidates are usually grateful for the opportunity if they're available to come and speak, because I guess they have, they want to access people. They want to be able to have those platforms to be able to share what they stand for and what their ideas are and what they would bring to the council.
Do the ORC itself, like the operations part, do they organise any Meet the Candidates type events?
No, what we do is we are currently working with our territorial authority neighbours to organise candidate information briefings. So prior to nominations opening, and I think one of them is after nominations open, you can come along and speak with us about what it's like to be part of ORC, what ORC stands for, what the meetings look like, what some of that technical information is. So that's really a briefing for potential candidates.
And they're all over the region. The first one's in Waitaki.
Wow, that's really interesting. I did not know that. So how would one find out about them?
Head to our website. I just sent out that information to our fabulous web editor this morning. So.
Right, okay, so that's all going to be on the website. So what you need, because I have seen that some people will say, it's too expensive to run as a candidate. It costs so much money, not necessarily for, the mechanics of doing it, but to get your name out there, to do the advertising, whatever. Would you like to comment on that?
I don't think we can really comment on that. I guess that's
the individual choice.
Your
really
decision. Yeah. Some people campaign and pay a lot. Some people, so all the donations and election expenses are put online after the elections.
Yeah. So you do have to keep track of how much you spend.
It's a legal requirement. And that's on the website. So you can actually go and look at how much people have spent. And it's quite different.
It is quite different.
Not everyone spends a lot of money.
Yeah.
And there's limits.
Some councils don't spend any money.
Yep, absolutely. And there's limits to how much you're allowed to spend. But Otago Regional Council, as in terms of our operation staff, we are not organising
Meet the Candidates
evenings.
Right,
no, I think that's not really our role.
It's beyond your role.
Yeah, and we have to be really careful that anything we do is equal opportunities for
across
everybody.
Yep.
And that's, so we're not doing anything there.
Yep. I just thought I'd check.
Yeah. Good thing to check.
I don't know. Some people might think that why are the ORC not just letting us know who their candidates are more?
Well, the candidate information we put up on our website once it's all finalised.
Right.
So the candidate booklet was what goes out in the post, but we'll have all that information on our website. So
and that's just exactly the same information, isn't it? The same 120 words, the same picture.
Yeah.
Oh, that's fantastic. Hey, thank you so much for coming along today. It's been really interesting, and it is great to know. I'm going to remind everybody again of those dates because your nominations are open on the 4th of July.
Correct.
And they close on the 1st of August.
Make sure you update your address so you can be a voter.
Absolutely, yes. So go to the registration page. If you haven't, you should have received by now your checking papers in the mail. If you have not received those papers, they've been sent to a different address. That doesn't matter. Just leave them wherever they are. Go to the website. If you haven't got a computer at home, go to your local library. The librarians are fantastic. Librarians the world over are fantastic people. And they all all the libraries across Otago have computers in them, and the librarian will be able to help you get onto that site. If you're at home, you've got a laptop or even a smartphone, I think you can do it on. Just go to vote.nz. That's an independent, the Electoral Commission page. It's a really simple thing to fill out. You don't need ID. You just need your address and your name. And then you can go there. Remember, elections start on the 9th of September with paper postal ones, and then finish at election day,
Midday.
12 noon, midday.
Yeah,
Correct.
It's going to be very exciting.
Yes,
October.
on October the 11th. It's a Saturday.
Yeah.
Hey, thank you very much. Ka kite, everyone.
Great
Ka kite.
chats, thank you.
Thanks for having us.
The Otago Institute for Arts and Sciences presents the Local Election 2025 special. Our aim is to demystify the voting process, encourage participation in local democracy. We present an apolitical political show, providing unbiased information, context and background on a range of issues. A refresher course on how to register, how to stand for election or nominate somebody else, how STV works and how to make sure your vote represents your values. Brought to you by the Otago Institute for Arts and Sciences, the Otago branch of the Royal Society NZ Te Aparangi. Available on podcasts wherever you listen and from the Otago Access website, oar.org.nz. You can support this local election special by becoming a member of the Otago Institute for Arts and Sciences, the Otago branch of the Royal Society Te Aparangi.
This podcast was produced by OAR FM Dunedin with support from New Zealand On the Air.